Okay, so I've tested the microphone. It works. Still a little bit froggy, but I just came back from dinner and I have some energy. It's too humid, overcast out in Boston to want to stay out and do things. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to read again. And I'll be away for a couple of days. So I want to try to get out in front of that because it'll probably be unlikely that I'll record these while I'm out. So yeah, I don't know how much energy I'll have for this, but I'm gonna give it my best because, let's see, trying to think about kinda what's on my mind right now with this. Hmm. Well, hmm. Well, one thing is these 2 topics, the holding patterns in the 3rd hub, and we're now at page 140. So we're making great progress. One of the other, I was looking through the videos today. And I really, I've really stopped putting on makeup and even like doing anything with my hair. And I had the realization that I want to return to that. I like it. It's like, oh, it's nice. So yeah. So apologies for this kind of vibe. I like the other one. It's nice. It's nice. So okay, these 2 holding patterns. So I really emphasized in the book the inflating side of the 3rd hub. So there's, I think it's like, 3 to 1 in terms of the volume of content written about an inflating adaptation in the 3rd hub. And there's definitely a biographical element to that as it relates to my own process and there being significantly more volume there. And let's see, what else do I have to say on that? Yeah, I mean, to revisit for the shrinking in the 3rd hub, which is incredibly prevalent, it's equally as prevalent. I've just emphasized this one component because it's, part of my own process and how that shows up in this quite a bit is, where I spend a lot of time reflecting. And that's another point of doing a practice of your own is the discernment of realizing that anything that is being presented to you is coming through the filter of another human being's experience. And as a result of that, it really deserves some critical thinking as far as just at least, kind of really connecting to your own direct experience and testing against that. But there's a lot more to say on this, and I think it's like too far. It goes too far for the purpose of what I'm about to do. It's too big a concept or topic. But anyway, but yeah, if the other side of this as a holding pattern, which is really it really moves into like self-protection, and I think the unflattering word would be almost cowardice, unfortunately. And the negative words, so for shrinking, it's on page 139, starts at 138, 139. and and for the inflating, it's like the unflattering words would basically be like asshole. Like it's not, so it's like you'll see it's um like arrogant self, and like even the notions of self-centered. So the things in, the slights against the 3rd hub that hold us back in terms of like terms like ego and self-absorbed and self-centered, which are actually, if you think of what the terms actually mean, they actually point more to having a really well-developed third hub, where because it's centered. But when we're talking, but the terms actually don't accurately describe the phenomenon as we're about to discuss. So this is the inflating. So there's two inflating, like, I guess we'll call them like archetypes. I'm going to read through them and we're just going to like make this happen. So this is the holding patterns inflating the classic. So let's see what we got. So the inflating adaptation has many characteristics of the highest ranking baboon in Morris's colony, and rules that apply to all power structures, from baboons to CEOs to presidents. The first commandment is that the top baboon displays the trappings, postures, and gestures of dominance, and in moments of active rivalry, it aggressively threatens its subordinates when physically or mentally challenged. It must overpower them. Yeah. In the extremely inflated adaptation, the primary concern is advancement of personal power, often at the expense of others. But according to Morris, the other 9 commandments relate to responsibility for the group, breaking up squabbles between subordinates, protecting weaker members from persecution, making decisions about social activities, and repelling threats and attacks from outside the colony. In some human hierarchies, when we see an excessively individualistic and inflated third hub, their behaviors of responsibility are less common. It may be an overblown concept of the absolute value of competitive behavior, not understanding that true leadership is not individualistic, even in the jungle in the jungle law of a baboon colony. Yeah, so that was Desmond Morris, the zoologist, who wrote The Human Zoo, which was a huge hit in the UK. And he had written the 10 laws of power, as, like as they're like exemplified in a baboon colony, and his point was that these are the same qualities exemplified by any person that's in a position of power. And I think one of the things that's interesting is that you see that in humans, it's kind of written about in here, is that we see a lot more about this like individualistic notion of having power and hierarchy and authority, which is really antithetical to truly like what a natural, you know, like what a natural embodiment of this particular quality is. Okay, so the classic inflated adaptation manages up while stepping on those below it, focusing on people with more power than it does, such as authority figures or people in a position to support their personal aspirations. So this is the inflation. So one thing that may not be clear in the comparison with Desmond Morris's baboon colony is that the baboon, as like an embodied version of power, has the like more fully dynamic aspects of power with the full 10 laws, and this adaptation is very individualistically focused in terms of how it exerts its power. So a particularly maddening example is a toxic colleague who targets coworkers it finds threatening while hiding in plain sight from bosses, the so-called kissing up while kicking down. An extreme but surprisingly common example of overcompensating inflation is the narcissistic executive who can never get enough and who destroys lives of others in its relentless pursuit of power. Extreme risk-taking appears brave, but when it's done without fully understanding and appreciating the consequences for others, it's reckless and irresponsible. Inflating tyrants will bellow commands, be greedy for power over others, and take shockingly rapid action that disrupts everyone around them. Perplexingly, they can also be brought to their knees by rejection from a singular source of approval, usually someone who rejected or disrespected them early in life. There can be a fixation on trying to win the respect and approval of a distant parent, typically assumed to be the father, but it's just as possible that it's a withholding, oppressive, authoritarian mother. When others see the tears of a tyrant, they may believe they're witnessing the person soften, when in fact they're witnessing an exit wound of pain. Beware. Witnessing this vulnerability can be a liability because the recoil of inflators can be alarming, sudden, and self-protective. As a counter defense from a perceived loss of power, the inflator may seek to regain its footing, and those who witness the softening may pay the price. Tell me if that is relatable. Also, I think that it's very common, these kind of like mommy daddy issue narratives that we have that are really like lack a lot of nuance. It's like women have daddy issues and boy, like, like apparently everyone has daddy issues, right? Because it's apparently like the mother's love is like the purest, as pure as the driven snow. But often with the men, at least in my experience, and these in men who have this classic, or these CEOs who are incredibly relentless and singular focused in their desire to assume power and status and wealth. And yeah, it's very often women. It's very often women. There's a lot of hatred towards women. And it's like, and women, as women who've rejected them as romantic interests also. So first of all, infidelity is really common with folks who have this adaptation pattern because it's about conquesting. And that it would be pretty uncommon that someone with this adaptation has like a developed, expanded fourth hub. And so feeling and connection would be diminished, and either shrunk or just underdeveloped. And so what that means is that like women are another, or romantic interests. So like whatever, like are conquests. And often they'll be often you'll see they'll be married. They'll be married, they'll have families, but that lives in a different universe for them in terms of it almost being like a separate thing and not truly integrated into who they are. So there's that. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna be able to get through this one, and I'm gonna have to wrap it up because I'm feeling a little froggier than I thought I was when I was just skipping down the street to come back home. So yeah, are you ready for this? All right, inflating the endurer. The overachievement cycle, which comes next, is like really is its own segment. And I'm probably gonna do a Prezi with it and put slides up on it. So there are visuals. So, okay, a more common inflated holding pattern is the endurer. I want to give a special shout out to Anodea Judith on this. I don't know if I referenced her here. And also, I believe Anodea Judith and Alexander Lowen. So a more inflated holding pattern is the endurer, a term coined by Anodea Judith for someone who takes great satisfaction and validation from outlasting and outworking others. This adaptation tends to have both physical and intellectual horsepower, a naturally strong third hub, but overspends its energy anyway, leaving itself exhausted and craving power from external validation. This adaptation is excessively active and often overwhelmed and on the verge of burnout and tends to get fixated on the importance of their busyness. It has very little realized personal power and exerts control through extremes in eating, exercising, and working, expecting others to be impressed by their intensity. The endurer is productive but always operating below full potential because it's taking on too much and is almost constantly overwhelmed, overworked, and tired. The endurer tends to believe that it holds everything together. So much of it, so much of its identity rides on the importance of its contributions, and it will feel devastated by the implication that things could succeed without it. The endurer gets tremendous satisfaction from outlasting others in terrible situations, believing that people who leave don't have what it takes. I think I want to keep reading because there's like the point I want to make here is that, in particular, the endurer has a very naturally strong third hub, but it's overspending. And because it's so out of balance, it doesn't embody its power. And so the thing that's phenomenal about the endurer is once consciousness is brought to this aspect of self and the softening and the disintegration of this adaptation as a defense. And it's a defense because it's like outrunning criticism, it's controlling. It's making sure it's more extraordinary than others in this, like, very particular way as far as being extraordinary as a competitor. It's being like, "I'm better, I'm winning, or I'm this, or I'm that," and but never fully feeling that it can be that. So it's just always, like, running. So it just never gets anywhere. And so as soon as that illusion is transmuted, that power does not go away. And one thing that is particularly extraordinary is that that power that was once used as actually an aggressive act towards oneself, because the thing is, this is actually a like self, this is like a, what is it? It's like sadistic, masochistic tendency where it's like kind of self-punishing in this way. And once that is removed, there is a gap that happens, which is that this advantage of being able to outwork, outlast, outdo, out this, out that, which provides no satisfaction. It provides a thin sliver of cognitive satisfaction, but as far as being embodied is absolutely disembodied, is that there's a gap because there's like a transition because you can't be mean to yourself anymore this way. Like, this mechanism of action winds up you just it's like total it's too far against your integrity to punish yourself with work and endurance, and so the shift from this adaptation to this actually naturally flowing, like, form like, very, intense and extensive naturally organic flowing energy is like things become easy. Things become like the effort, like there's effort, but it naturally arises. It's like, the whole thing of like, if I let go, everything falls apart. Is this controlling? And it's like that you let go and then, okay, maybe things fall apart. But, those things weren't supposed to stay together. And the power the power actually can be repurposed to flowing organically and naturally, and because it's arising unobstructed, and it just kind of taps into like the flow. It's kind of, it's actually a little bit, if you've done yoga and you've done anything with bandhas, it kind of has that quality where you're actually, instead of like forcing strength into a posture, what you're doing is you're actually fine, like you're letting go of that whole notion of like, if I just get strong, I can like yank myself up. And then you find these like energy locks, and you find this way to use energy so that it like all of a sudden it's like and it like floats up and it's effortless. You find that kink, kink, and all of a sudden these postures that just looked like they were gymnastics, like the yoga of as like what I'd kind of consider to be like where you're yoking in these other aspects of this particular physical experience, have this like mind-blowing effortlessness. And it's like this kind of flow, and this is the endure letting go of the notion of control. Yeah. So endurers are high achievers whose struggles with self-worth and confidence interfere with their ability to respect their accomplishments. They tend to see their ability to accomplish something as an invalidation of its difficulty. When the third hub is strong, balanced, and dynamic, we can celebrate wins and take responsibility for losses. The endurer struggles to celebrate its wins, and fearing failure is usually in a purgatory of grinding out work, always outrunning the sense of lacking success despite its objectively measurable accomplishments, and rarely allowing the wins to feel like they matter. Both the classic and endure holding patterns are the result of overcompensating for underdeveloped self esteem, and both seek to have power over others to inflate the confidence they have in their abilities. But again, confidence involves feeling good based on performance, so it's tethered to conditions. These two holding patterns are difficult to address directly because they're highly defensive about their behavior and may view moderation as a threat to their work ethic, which they will often perceive as their greatest asset. These holding patterns fear losing their edge, unaware that intensity is what keeps them from being leaders people genuinely respect. These ones are good. This is really good. By introducing more dynamism and equanimity, the capabilities and talents remain, but life becomes infinitely more enjoyable. Yeah, that one, 141. Give it a read if it resonates. Go again. Um, Yeah, because the thing is, like a reminder earlier in the chapter where we had self-esteem and self-confidence, is that self-esteem is just this holistic anti-shame. It's just the sense of inherently, like it's self-acceptance. It's kind of like being, yeah, it's kind of like regardless of what happens and what you do, your sense of self is just like, yep, didn't win that one. But, at the heart of it, I know myself. I like myself. And confidence is, as I'm framing it here, is related to really specific achievements. So it's relative. So especially you look at achievements that are related to physical accomplishments, and those are quite likely going to diminish with age. And and even just advantage, the fact that somebody could come along just out of the blue and be like extraordinarily like smarter, more this, more this, more that, um, and just totally like knock out, like kick out like a pole in the long pole in the tent, so to speak, if there's a lot of identity tied up with the ability to do certain things. So confidence and self-esteem, you see that in a person that can be genuinely enamored with other people's extraordinariness in areas where they seek to be phenomenal. But someone with low self esteem and high confidence is going to find people who are extraordinary in their desired fields. Like, they're just gonna be so conflicted. So, yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting like, the concept of confidence. Like, the con man is like a confidence man, and that confidence is like a singular facet, it's sort of like what like and also it's like, misappropriated for so many things. So it's also being able to identify that confidence can be like a mule for kind of carrying like malintent, appearing, especially for people who will come, forward and say, I can solve all your problems for you. Like, these kind of notions of these like guru types who are like, I know more about you than you know about yourself. And they have a couple little like tricks and stuff where they can like kind of wow you. I mean, look, even read Parinama and some of that, if that was presented in a particular way, it'd be really easy to make someone think, oh my gosh, wow, that's an insight that's beyond what I currently have. So as a result of that, it could be mistaken as someone having deeper knowledge about myself than I do. Whereas I'm here to say that is not the case. That is absolutely not the case. And so yeah, the endure is near and dear to my heart as a as my, like former holding pattern. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I can speak to, I remember once somebody had said to me, when I was like full endurer, I was working, I don't know, like so much, 80, 100 hours a week in very high intense environments. And, like building my career, making a lot of money. And I remember somebody had said to me, and I said, someday you're going to regret this. You're going to regret having done this, like giving so much of yourself. And I remember all I could see when I looked at them was I just saw somebody that I perceived as not having what it takes. And so when I talk about like you cannot approach a third hub inflation with any type of like it's an inside job first of all, and to address it in oneself, it's second and it's fourth hub. And once again, I'm just repeating from the last reading. And if you are dealing with someone who is inflated and making your life difficult, which they often do, that respect and appreciation are the lack of it are their wound. So if you can artfully use respect and appreciation without turning, like really, it has to be kind of a line drive. And we won't talk too much on that, but understanding that to be activated by someone who comes at us with an inflated third hub is particularly difficult because to fight back is to summon a conflict. To back down is to lose all respect and position with the person. So the navigation is very dynamic and nuanced, and it is very case by case. But one of the strongest defenses against this type of person as they show up is the relative balance of your own third hub. It's that yeah, because if you're imbalanced, if you're an endurer, if you're a classic inflator, yourself and you come across somebody who has more power than you, who is inflated, it's just gonna be, it just activates this like incredible conflict, inner conflict, sometimes outer conflict, but the one that you won't win. And it creates a lot of like agony, like fire, because it's just such a conflict. It's like it creates the combustion. And so when we do the work in this hub, to keep clearing it out, we keep expanding the inner capacity of it. We keep restoring the dynamism, exploring the aspects of this as we're doing right now, and bringing consciousness to it, bringing emotional regulation to it, bringing somatic processes in terms of the techniques and exercises to really just both activate and balance it. This is how we become someone who is incredibly effective with this personality, because like many of these like adaptations, if not all of them, they're kind of they're forceful, but they're weak. So they're forceful, and so if you do not have your footing, you're gonna get knocked over. You're gonna be put off. You're gonna be activated. You're gonna get taken out of your space. But if you're actually getting doing this work, you're literally the lighthouse. You stand firm. You can flow and you can manage your emotions. So it changes everything back to transform everything. There are dynamics that you may think that are absolutely inescapable as in life as you know it right now, that are. It's all this is malleable. This is how this is malleable. And this is one that is extraordinarily helpful, because being good with people in power is incredibly important for the advancement of our own purpose, our causes, even for our own personal gain. But if we are constantly activated, if we're constantly thrown off, if we're constantly finding conflict, if we're constantly destabilized, we're reactive, and we lose the respect of the folks that we need to actually recruit for our purpose and our efforts. So the work in this hub, in my personal experience, is extraordinarily meaningful. And my own experience with the shift of disintegration and softening the notion of like control, outworking, out extraordinarying, competing, and competing not to about, sort of the competing with yourself. It's competing because to overtake other people provides a temporary validation and a temporary relief from the tension of low self-esteem. But it's temporary, because the next competition, it's always going to come, and with it new competitors. And when the folks, the circumstances, and the people around us have the ability to really like weigh in and play a role in informing how we feel, like how we believe, what we believe to be who we are, it's understandable why people get like so competitive. It's understandable like people get sore losers, because it's so scary to have lost, because what is at stake is just so profound. And it is so nuanced to address this hub. as we're discussing. Yeah. But if you just look, if you just begin to look, have respect for it, respect for what it's done, its qualities do, respect and appreciation. Have respect and appreciation for it. Little by little. Little by little, it softens, and what it reveals is authentic power, which is magnetic. It is charisma. It is the charisma of sitting having a coffee and having a quality people can't put their finger on, but they're drawn towards. People come up and they say, "Hi, what are you reading? What are you doing?" Like the term like try hard, the try hard. The inflator is the try hard. It's kind of like even the thing where you've like the guy in the Lamborghini, has been like working out, like very, everything's surface. It's just not really that cool. Being self-composed and being a little buoyant, kind of like enjoying what it feels like to be inside of yourself, holding your boundary, like having and let me tell you, it doesn't, one of the things is it doesn't there's a challenge that comes with this, which is I would be remiss not to bring this up, is that inflated folks see this authentic power and they resent it. They don't understand it because it defies everything that you could be composed in this particular way without having more power than them. That people could be magnetically drawn towards your leadership without you having a higher title than them. The fact that they're drawn towards you and they don't understand why. At first, they like it because they think, wow, you can do things for me. But then they start to see back to the self-esteem problem. That's like, this might present a pretty significant problem to my self-esteem, my self-esteem. Because for the high confidence, low self-esteem, if you have authentic power, low self-esteem is going to have a really hard time with that. It's unsettling. It's unsettling. So there is a bit of management that comes up, like having to manage people who are activated, resentful. If you're watching this and you know me, certainly something it's been a personal experience of mine. And I think that there's a reconciliation with this, which is figuring out more about where you belong. And it's making decisions about managing these dynamics so that they ultimately support your your outcomes and desires, like your big pictures, your end games. So it's being really clear with yourself about what you're getting out of a situation like that. So be it money, I'll use that as one fantastic example. And realizing that it's not a sustainable dynamic, and that it's very likely once you get into this place with authentic power that you are going to have to become a leader. A leader in your own right. You are going to have to occupy this space. And we're going to talk about next is the overachievement cycle as it relates to risk aversion, as it relates to addressing all of the things that the endurer, in particular, struggles against and incorrectly believes to be true about what's possible for it, because some of the interruptions and stressors with shame, obedience, discipline, punishment create a relationship with risk, like extraordinarily high aversion to risk. Risk aversion, and the idea that to make a mistake is dangerous. To make a mistake is dangerous. So avoiding mistakes and not even proceeding with being open to the reality that mistakes are and failure are not absolute terms. They're just missing marks and having to kind of course correct. They're a little embarrassing, maybe you lose some money, maybe you lose some time in your perception. Maybe hope, maybe you don't feel like you have enough energy to keep going. So it's like, rest up, you got this, learn, iterate, keep going. So we'll talk more about that. But this is a really great topic. I love it. So I actually lost my frogginess because I got really excited about it. And I'm excited for you if you have gotten this far watching this and this is resonating with you. I'm really, really joyful about sharing this with you because it's important. It's important that you know that that you know this. Because it's like The Wizard of Oz. This came up a lot when I was like, in certain there are eras in this book that would, like, be very evocative about certain touchstones in popular culture, and one of them was The Wizard of Oz, and the whole notion, like, all of a sudden, I had this, like, I think there was a movie called, like, The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy, um, and, like, even I think there was one, like, Indiana Jones. These, like, movies and these popular kind of cultural tropes, which is, like, the whole movie is searching for something that you had all along, and that the adventure, that the process was what revealed it to you. So in The Wizard of Oz, the tiny little man behind the curtain cannot give you courage. Can't give you a heart, can't take you home, you know? You can. It's in you, it's in you. And it's these adaptations, once again, that once protected us, no longer do, that have distorted our perception of ourselves. So it is in, like, the Emerald City where it's like, ping, full color. Now it's like, it's like now you can see yourself. Now you can see yourself. You had the adventure. You have the adventure. You seek it out. You to find it, to find it. And what is possible is just beyond comprehension. It's one of the reasons I've had a fairly difficult, it's starting to come through now, um, time in the short term about figuring out how do you explain what parinama is? Because, like a lot, a really common advice is to, brand it, like you're talking to yourself like 5 years ago. It's like, what is the person 5 years ago wanting? And I think the challenge I have is that I didn't know what to want. I knew I wanted what I have. I knew what I wanted. I knew that this This is this process that continues to transmute me, continues to transmute you. I'm in it right now with you. I'm in it right now with you. That this process that continues to transmute me, what I'd wanted, actually perfect for this segment, is what I'd wanted was I had wanted something that was going to make a lot of sense to an endurer, which is something big and domineering and like a, like huge business, or this, I'm going to figure out my empire. And that was just like, that was it. It's like, if I have that, that's the breakthrough. And now what I have is the embodiment of something I didn't even really understand that you could want. In fact, if somebody had said you can feel more, your life is like more delicious. Your life, if you're like, things are hard but effortless. They're challenging, but there's like this kind of effortless. There's all this space now. Because all this repetitive thoughts that's snow globed, now having tools to actually work with that in a way that's constructive. There's just a lot, and also the thing of like doing a lot of work that's just like busy work, when the right solutions naturally arise if you have an inquiry practice of creating space and asking questions and really accepting that you don't know the answer, and then letting them arise, and they arise with like everything, like 80% of what you need, and you kind of like battle out through the remainder of that. But it's, I mean, this is, yeah, so so this has been the challenge. It's like, how do you explain to somebody? It'll come. The explanation will come. And, and as more people partake in this process and experience the transformation of it, I think it will just organically grow. That, I don't know. I don't know to what extent marketing will play in this. I haven't felt, while I wrote the book, I really had nothing to give to any part of marketing this, to like talking about it on social media or whatever, when I was writing the book. I mean, for like, what is it, like 3 years? If you knew me personally on social media, it was just like pictures of cats and, Boston and just vacations, or what, or just like a picture of a mug or something. I don't know. Like, there just wasn't anything extra. And I am continuing to follow that thread, which is I only do the things that I can feel there's a certain energetic quality where it's like there's enough juice for it. And this is one of them. This is one of them, which is really interesting to me, because you could imagine this is something that you might want to like stop doing, like reading into to nobody for hours. Like, I mean, if you had given me a multiple choice, which was like, here's one thing, of all these things that you could be working on, and it's a thing that I keep running to this, to like keep going with it. And just naturally, the things that are rising, that are kind of evolving in their process, are just, and the things that kind of don't work and feel a little bit hokey, and are, social media is really tough for this, because social media doesn't really allow, aside from video, but in static posts, like being able to portray dynamism and nuance, because like the same statement is just as false as it is true, depending on the perspective it's being viewed from, the circumstances it's being viewed from. So there's this kind of like weird thing about static posts. So I'm just kind of keeping on rolling here. So yeah, yeah, it's coming. It's coming. And I will tell you that, people often tell me say things like, well, this isn't going to be for everyone. It's like, nothing's for everyone. There's 8 billion people on earth. And a lot of my life is constructed around people that were part of me living like very far outside of my integrity. So part of what I'm like going through right now in my own transformation is learning to really show up as myself to those people and pay the consequences for it, which is it makes them uncomfortable, and live with that. It's hard. It's hard. It's sad. It's like die off. Like it's just die off. It's hard, it's like to show a fuller and evolving version of myself, which I really need to do in order to be a magnet for the right people, you know? It's not their fault, like, it's like, it's this these were the terms of engagement that I entered into, was who I was, like, the parts of myself that I showed. And those parts, some of them were constructions and attempts to belong, like fearful, like, sort of adaptations to make myself, like, fit in, be accepted. And all along, the feeling of being like, "Oh, this is like," of the discomfort of knowing how unsustainable it is at its core, but also feeling the relief of being like, "I've got this for right now." So now it's like the level of absolute comfort I have in day to day, the like my sense, like how anxiety exists in my life is just like, it's kind of like a vapor that sort of floats through and I look at with curiosity versus being something, it's like just how, just how the ever evolving process of like more and more and more, as I'm like, whoa, I think, it's like, oh my gosh, this is who I've always been. There was a joke. I was talking with a friend, David, we were watching, and we were talking about how I'm doing this, and it felt like, oh my gosh, this big reveal to all the people who knew me as an executive. And it was like, oh my God, this is, I have to like let people know like who I am now. The book is this great, it is. I mean, it's like, I look, to be fair, this book is like without question, an outing. I don't know many people who have like a record of a very strong position on a worldview that exists in the world, relatively close to free. Um, but, I was like, "Yeah, I'm going through this thing where it's kind of like," the analogy I have is that it's kinda like coming out and being like, "Hey, this is like my, like, sort of my position on life and the world," and having people be like, "Yeah, no, we know." So it's like, you hear the stories of people coming out as gay, and everyone goes, "Yeah, no, we knew." Like, this is what this is. So anyway, I'm gonna sign off for now. Thank you so much. And of course, Mira, I have to give her a shout out. Look, you know what? The shout outs are available for anybody, but right now, Mira is the only person who comments. And so as a result of that, I give special thank you and love. Mwah. It means so much to me. And I know people are, having experiences with watching these, reading the book, doing the practice, doing TPM for beginners. Folks are getting therapists and working with therapists on it. Highly recommended. And even, doing practices, coming up with all manner of building. The actual TPM for beginners replays will be up through midnight on the 23rd of July. So I don't know when you're going to be watching this. They might be gone already. But week 4 is how to build a practice. So that might be helpful. Week 1 through 3 are really about foundational aspects about how to actually come into the practice in terms of approaching it with one's relationship with oneself, emotional regulation, and more. Okay. This is an hour. Yeah, clearly I like this one. Clearly I like this one. But yeah, so here, look, we'll do a little moment together. I'll do one more. It's nice. So breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. I am happy for you. Yeah. I will see you soon. I appreciate you so much. Bye for now.